Hey everyone, my name is Yogita and I am on Just Bate. Very happy to be here.
I'm a fool for your love.
Hey guys, welcome back to Just Baate. My name is Aswin. We are back. Like I said in the last episode, we are back. But I made a mistake though. In the last episode, I said we're going to roll out episodes every Sunday. It's every alternate Sunday so that we can continue. We can keep up our consistency and stuff. But yes, we are back and Praatib's here. He missed out on the first ever episode of this year because I don't know why, but he's here. Praatib, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, dude. It's been really long since I last recorded. It's been like 2 months at least, and it's just great to be back. So yeah, that's there. And both of us are slightly sick, so that's not very good news. But apart from that, we have a very special episode today. And the person we have with us, she's in fact been on our podcast before as well, and she was one of our earliest guests. We're going to talk about psychology, but let Ashwin introduce who the guest is. So yeah.
Yes, like Praatib said, she's been on our podcast before we even had a YouTube channel, by the way. She was on a fourth ever episode, second ever guest. And here she is. She's had experience of student wellness counseling for over 9 years. She's done masters in clinical psychology, but I've seen her help a lot of people through a lot of adversities and come out of it strong. She's a phenomenal human being, and it's our pleasure to introduce Yogita Hastak, man. And
Hello. Hello, my
hello.
God. I remember the last time I was here and I had the
Yes.
exact same reaction like, oh my God, this is a bit much, but thank you so much.
Ma'am, before we get into the episode itself and pick your brain on a lot of things, like I said,
Yeah,
you're a psychologist and you've been a
yeah.
psychologist for a lot of years. Is there any stereotype or are there any stereotypes that people have about psychologists in general or about you that it's very wrong?
Okay, so stereotypes, 100%. I think more when I think it was about a decade ago. So I don't think that's fair to say anymore as much. But
Hmm.
before, it was always like, oh, I have to be careful about what I say around you, or oh, you
Oh,
can read my mind,
right.
right? You can read my mind. Like I have
Yeah.
nothing better to do in that moment, right? Like sit and read minds. But those are typically things that people are, or like, oh, now, okay, analyze me. I'm like, really? I don't even know you, right? So
Right.
things like that, I think people have misconceptions. I think also I'd like to say here that the taboo around mental health is it's improving. We have a lot of emphasis now, and there's a lot of conversation happening. But at the grassroots level, I think there is still a bit of like we are holding on to some indoctrination of, oh, if you need help means there's something wrong with you, right? So for me, I try and give my example a lot. Like I see a therapist, because it's part of our practice. I mean, it's something that you should do because that's always, even when you study, you sort of have to go through the practice yourself and go to somebody. But other than that, I think it just helps. You know, sort of demarcate two parts of your life, right? The professional and the personal.
Right.
It
Yeah.
does not, like, I'm crazy as a mom, right? I have two kids and all the theory can just go out of the window. So there is, I keep thinking that, and it's like literally like a record thing playing in my head. I'm like, don't say this. This is not okay. You were told people not to say this, but it happens anyway. So I think all of us just need help at times, and sometimes we don't, and we handle ourselves, and either is fine, right? Whatever each one needs. So yeah, so there are a lot of stereotypes. There is a little bit of it's, let's say that it's not as simple as going to a doctor for when you're sick. You
Right.
don't think twice about it, right? It's not something that you don't tell others.
Hmm.
But even if you see a therapist, you won't, it's not something you'll disclose very easily.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
Yes.
there is a
True.
bit more ground to cover there.
It's very interesting how you touched upon you as a mother because we have a question related to that. But we'll get into that later. Pratap, go ahead, buddy.
Ashwin knows all about my kids because any voice recording has got like
Yes. Yes.
screaming in the back. Yeah,
Yes.
so
It's very wholesome. Very wholesome.
The first question we have is obviously how you got into psychology, and is it was there something that made you want to pursue psychology, or was that like always a plan for you?
okay. So I have to be candid here. Me getting into the professional field was a bit of a, I mean, it was a bit like of a fluke. I wouldn't say that it was very purposeful. I think for me, all through school, I didn't, I sort of struggled slash, floated through. I didn't really excel. I didn't do well. I had a lot of other things going for me, but academically, I didn't really enjoy much. There were a few things that I did. I think it was oddly math, but it was always like something that I didn't see myself as a strength. And then I think so. So I went into college quite aimless, very like, okay, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. That's pretty much what I knew. And I knew I'd be good with the arts, and especially around something to do with psychology was something that did grasp my attention, but it was not something that I was very driven to. It was a very like, okay, I'll do psychology. Yeah, it'll be something I can do. I think what you asked, Praatibh, I think why it correlates is because I've always been that sort of friend who everyone goes to. There's a lot of secrets that I would hold back in the day, and I still do. I think I just become that agony aunt kind of person that people talk to, and so I felt like I really do like that. I enjoy that. I enjoy involving myself in that. There's something that I like about it as well. It's not just me being a good friend. So I think that's where it came from. Me being curious about behavior, humans, the brain, the mind. So I think it started there. And I think what happened was, yeah, so I went to Ferguson in Pune, and it was a very like, okay, I was brought up in Oman. So, for me, again,
Oh
it was,
wow!
you didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Are you serious? Oh my God,
Whoa!
okay.
Whoa!
Yay. I did. I entirely grew up in Muscat. So for me, it was like, okay, I need to go to India and I need to go to some city where I don't, like my mom was very particular, like, I don't want you to have any relatives and people you have, you got to do it on your own and deal with life. And so I think that's why then Pune happened and then Ferguson happened. And then I said, okay, great, psychology is good program there and I'll get in. And then everyone said, no, no, it's very hard to get it. I said, okay, forget it. We'll do eco. It was like that for me. But then I think after my first year, I did manage to make the cut. So I was like, okay, great, psych it is, And then so basically we major in our second and third year.
Right.
So that's how I sort of got into it. But I think once I landed, I was like, I mean, I was just there. I started to just absorb so much. I started to really enjoy it, excel, be self-motivated. And by the time I did my master's, I was really like, I think I was showing up like towards the top of the class, which was like it started to matter to me in terms of grades and stuff. I didn't care before. Or rather, if I cared, I would be in a bad place. So probably didn't try not to care. But yeah, I think so I feel like even just pursuing something that you really are interested in, motivated towards, can make a huge difference. And I'd love to see more kids do that. I think, yes, you guys have more of a I don't know, a little more freedom to choose, but then also knowing takes a lot of awareness, right? To know exactly what it is that you do want, even if you have the freedom. How do you know what it is that you do want to do? So for me, it was that organic. It was like very la la la, and then I suddenly sort of got into. I was by the time I finished my bachelor's, I was very sure that okay, this is it, and this is what I want to do. And again, then it was a very it was not a mainstream career.
Right.
And it was always a very, okay, this is your choice, but know that you will not be paid well in your life, like
Right.
never.
Yeah.
It was always like
Mhm.
that. And it was a
Mhm.
risk you took. You either worked with an NGO, or you worked in schools, or you worked in a clinical setup. All of
Right.
this doesn't pay very well. So it was always this thing that, okay, I want to do what I want to do because I feel like this is it for me. But I always will I'll compromise on certain things. But today that doesn't hold true. I feel like that is not part of it. I mean, it can be in your mind, and I've let go of it very recently, which is why I feel like, okay, no, I can actually, you can have a super flourishing career. It's also another thing with psychology, it can be that you need to spend a lot of years studying. So, I ideally would have loved to do like my MPhil or my PhD. It was something that I really wanted, and God knows, maybe I will sometime in the future. Why not?
Right.
But
Yeah. Why not? Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, so it was something that I felt like, okay, how many more years are you going to study, right? So
Mhm.
that is the other thing that you sort of sign up for. But I didn't. I just stopped at my master's, and then I sort of worked in many fields and figured out my niche through that. So
It's very interesting because you said you were aimless when you were going to college, and I think Praatibh and I can relate to this. We have a lot of friends who are very scared about how
yeah,
they don't know what to do while they are
yeah,
in college, and they're
yeah,
worried about is getting a job and trying
yeah,
to settle in. But
yeah,
it's like that's a beautiful story. Once you know what interests you, and once it
yeah,
clicks, then
yeah.
it'll click
That's
on for a
it.
long time.
Yeah,
Now you did your
that's it.
masters, you did your bachelor's, and psychology as a subject is very practical also, right? Like you have to not only
Hmm.
study but listen. So when you were in the field, and like you said, you explored a lot of fields. I wanted to ask you, when you started listening to people, listening to their stories, and when you had to tell them something, was there a point where you were scared and you were worried about, like initial few days, were you worried about what if I say the wrong thing, or what if I don't understand
Hmm.
exactly what they say? How did you get over that?
Right. That's a good question. I think you as a beginner, like I think again, I studied in India, so things are a little different. It's very theoretical here. Even the masters I did was very theory heavy. I think a lot of my practical work came from when I started working, and I think when I came out of college also, I was rather idealistic, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't really know how this applies on the field, right?
Right.
So I think initially, definitely, there is this whole fear of, okay, what if I'm not the right person for this, or
Mm-hmm.
what if I say something that can, and honestly, Ashwin, to be very very honest, that continues to be a thought in my mind because I work with
Oh,
children, right?
right.
Essentially, and adolescents. It's like I know they are holding on to every word I say, and I can see the
Yes.
impact it makes. But I can see that now when I'm almost close to 40, right? I can see them after years of doing it. I know that okay, these kids, because I've seen them come back to me and say that okay, that thing you said really made a difference, and I don't even know I said that, right? It's not something that sat in my mind. So I think there's a huge responsibility there, and I think like any professional, there's a margin for human error. There might be times that you do mess up, or also when we studied, there was so psychology has evolved a lot over the years, a lot. So when I studied, there was when we were taught in practice, you do not talk about yourself at all. You are like literally like a
Oh,
object. It's like you're a mirror. That's it.
right.
You cannot have anything to do with you. Come out in the practice, because then there can be a counter transference is what it is called. So it becomes like a dependence and a
Mm-hmm.
codependence between your client and you. And so that has evolved. I mean, the modalities that I follow today have a lot of self disclosure. Of course, it's not that
Oh,
I'm going to
right.
sit and talk about myself, but
Mm-hmm.
the moment I give us a personal story, it immediately clicks
Right.
into place. They see me as human.
Right.
They shed a few more layers of okay, I can say this also to her,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think that those sorts of things, okay, I don't know why I came to this point, but yeah, to say that things have evolved, and I think even in my practice I am evolving. For me, the most amount of time I've worked is with kids and adolescents, so I have a very good understanding of how kids behave, what they're doing, how they are responding to me, what is it that they're glazing over. Sometimes if they're lying about something, I can tell now in a session. Maybe before I was so involved in formulating what I had to respond, that maybe the listening skills were a little more superficial. So I think everything comes with a lot more practice and a lot of. I think for me, what works for me is I get very engrossed and entrenched when I'm talking to someone. So for me, everything switches off. So that's when I feel like when I'm committed like that, I feel like I'm able to, really absorb. If I've said something that could be taken out of context, I have gone back and said that, listen, I think you got uncomfortable by what I said. Is that the case? And they've said, yeah, because of this. I said, okay, my bad, I will step back. And whenever you're ready, we'll talk about it. So there is a bit of back and forth, and there has to be a way. I mean, at the end of the day, like doctors or
Mm-hmm.
any professionals that are seen as close to God, they're human, right? And there will be human error, and there will be times that um, the wrong thing is done. What I feel also happens, and this used to happen much more, not anymore. We're far more educated, but before, psychologists were also seen as people who gave advice. And that is not at all the case. Yeah, we're not here to give advice, and we're not here to tell you what to do because your reality is yours, right? Who am I to tell you? I will work from my space of values and my age, my experience. How do I know your life? And how do I know what it is that you want out of your life? Because you're leading your life, not that I have to, if I tell you what to do. So, unless explicitly said that, I mean, even then, I had a lot of kids saying, just tell me what to do, like, don't make me think. But I'm not here to tell you that. I'm not here for that. I'm here to actually, in that sense, guide you in the way that you probably can't for yourself, right? Sometimes we need some help.
There's a couple of things I wanted to touch upon. First thing, talking about like studying psychology in India, is there some sort of discrepancies in the syllabus? Because personally, as an engineering student, I know that a lot of stuff is very outdated, like even the stuff we study right now. So, is that something that you faced, or do you think that is an issue?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So what happens? See, okay, Pratibh, sorry, but I'm also a bit outdated generally. So my experience is from 20 years ago. Okay. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I can't really say today. I think, see, if you look at like, say, colleges which are, I don't know. Oh, sorry, I'm missing out on the word. Just give me a second. These Jindal and Ashoka and all, what are they
Right,
called? Liberal arts,
right.
liberal arts. Yeah,
right.
sorry. So liberal
Yeah,
art
yeah,
colleges, 100% because their faculty is, very current. If you go to, say, I mean, if you go to like a place like Nimhans, which is like a mental health haven, just from the number of people you see and the kind of experiences that people come with, you will be very current because things are, like I said, evolving in the thing. But
yeah.
when I studied, well, yeah, I mean, it was like there are things that it was so theoretical that parts of it are applicable, but then some of it is just left in the theory, right? And what I feel is that I have had to update a lot, and I didn't realize that. I don't think when I got into the field, I thought that, oh, this is something that I'm going to have to keep doing. But yeah, you have to keep updating yourself. You have to keep learning about different therapies that are coming in, because if you stick to the same old stuff, then yes, you're very outdated. But again, since I'm not in like the teaching field, I can't really
Right.
say for sure. I can't say
Okay.
for sure, but I think, yeah,
Uh,
things are evolving.
Yeah, and a follow-up to that, I mean, education today is also very commercialized. So do you think that at some level there are maybe colleges or schools that try to get in psychology only from a money standpoint?
So I'm not very sure about that. I
Okay.
feel like, but I feel like psychology has picked up as a applied subject for quite a
Yeah,
for
definitely.
few
Yeah.
kids, and especially I think being from so my experience is mainly in IB schools, and
Right.
how IB works is that you kind of do you can do, say, psychology, you can do math, and you can do economics, right?
Yeah.
So if I go to college and I pursue economics and psychology, then what I come out of what comes out of that could be something that isn't even a thing yet, right? So so I think in that sense, that's my experience area. So I feel like I wouldn't think so, but I don't know what the reality is in India
Uh,
anymore right now. Yeah, when it
And
comes to
that
colleges, not so much. Schools, yes.
Hmm. That's fair though. It's interesting how Praatibh touched upon two of his interests, engineering and money. But ma'am, taking a step back, taking a step back, you said you were talking about how as a mother you have to think through a lot of things before you ask your kids to do something. Now, as someone who went to therapy, like every thought that I have or everything that I do, I
Hmm.
know I'm thinking a lot about it to make sure
Hmm.
it's right. And I'm assuming as a
Hmm.
psychologist yourself, and because you've studied so much, there would have been times where you're just psychoanalyzing yourself, and there comes a point where
Hmm.
you can't do that, right? In the end, you are a human being.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
did you make sure you are a person and you went about your life as a human being and not thinking through every thought that came into your mind?
Yeah, so I think a lot of us also, we work a lot in autopilot, and
Right.
I think when it comes to when we are in situations, when we are in conflict, when we are in a difficult situation, I don't think that happens. Not for me, at least. For me, I'm in just a flow. And then I come from that uneducated space,
Right.
which is very instinctual, it's very raw. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like, oh, okay, I think this is the right way to see it, and then this will have this sort of outcome. It doesn't come out like that. In your quieter moments, yes, you sort of analyze, but honestly, Ashwin, I think for me, I don't have a very strong perspective of myself. Like, I know my strengths, I know that sort of thing, but to actually be able to self therapize, so to say, is difficult. It's counterproductive also, I think, because you never know when to stop, and you never know, there's no right or wrong, right? It's really very individual. So I think that can be difficult. In fact, in therapy, I was told that you need to stop doing that with your kids as well. You need to stop thinking of the outcome or something like that. Because for me, I'm like, I speak to so many kids who have so many issues, that for me, I'm like, okay, if I'm saying this right now, does that mean that they grow up and that is the sort of thing? And that's ridiculous, because honestly, the kids have to know that moms are crazy sometimes, and they do these things and they lose their minds, and that's a very real thing, right? It's not, I can't doctor my every interaction with them. That's not
Right.
natural at
Yeah.
all, and that's not going to be helpful to them either. They have
Mm.
to deal with it. What I do is I go back a lot. I go back and I either do like a debrief, or I come out candidly and undo whatever I did. Like, if I've really lost it, and then I'm like, when I sit down by myself, I'm like, okay, that was exaggerated. I'll call my son. Mostly it's him. And I call him and I talk to him about how I say, okay, I think I exaggerate. I was really angry, but this is why I was angry. And I'm sorry if and then he gets it. So I do that a lot. So I kind of go back and help him understand why. So I think I would like to say, and not in a boastful way, but I feel like my son, he's quite emotionally intelligent. He gets it. He gets the nuances at an early age. Maybe it's just because you talk to them so much more about even you being
Right.
human at the end of it, right? That there's only so much one can do.
Yeah, that's very
Yeah.
interesting. I don't think a lot of our mothers did that actually. But I,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you if, like, this is the last question about you. But before we move on, I wanted to ask you if, when you listen to kids, do you compare the behaviors and what they say to your own kids, and do you want to align them a certain way, or do you let your kids flow through however they want, make the mistakes they could make, and
Okay, I'd like to answer it one way, but but if I have to be honest, no, yeah. I think, as a parent, you get rather controlling. That's what I'm saying. Theory can completely go out of the window, where you're like, oh, let them make their mistakes. What's the worst that'll happen? I can say that to somebody else, but when I'm going through it, I'm like constantly trying to solve, their problems, and say that, oh,
Mhm,
it's okay, maybe this is what they need, maybe this, but
mhm,
actually, if I step back, maybe they will be able to discover things for
right,
themselves. So I don't know. I think it's very hard. It's very hard to. I think it happens both ways. I think there are times when I'm able to have that cognitive process of saying, hold back, it's fine,
right,
let's see what happens. But that has to come in a very calm space. And with things the way they have been in the last 2 3 years, it's been difficult for the kids as well, and for us as adults. So I think that whole a little bit of taking cognizance of the situation happens less. I hope when they're out of my hair a little more, I'll have a better perspective on them. Right now, it's too much of FaceTime also. It's not normal, right, to have them at home all the time. It's not normal for them to be at home all the time, and they're very young. The other thing is, I think I also am working with a different age group. So when it comes to my kids, they're under 10 right now, but the kids I work with are teenagers. So I think I tend to not compare so much directly, but more in terms of my kids, or if I say mostly in terms of my parenting, like, okay, or even them, it's like, oh, if they don't do this every day, does that mean that they might grow up to be a certain way,
right.
which is very irrational. It's
Yeah,
complete
yeah,
nonsense, and that's when I need my partner to come in and say, "Are you crazy? Like, chill. It's they don't need. It's okay. It's
yeah.
not the end of the world, right? Small things, even meals, like, oh, they can't sleep hungry, but it's not happening every day. It's
Mhm.
okay. Let it go. So yeah, sometimes you need a reminder from outside, doesn't come from within.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know an outsider's perspective is helpful. But now talking about few topics that we wanted to cover. Now the examples I take, just assume it's hypothetical. I'm not naming names or anything. But there
But
have but there have been
these are
sportsmen there have been
okay.
sportsmen and women around the world who have dropped out of competitions with the not an excuse, but with the reason that there's a lot of pressure. It's they're getting anxious and they can't go through with it. And there are people around me that I know who won't do certain things because their excuse is that they're depressed. Now, I've always wondered because I've always been self reflective and I've always thought about if I've ever told myself that I can't do this just because I'm very sad, and have I used that as an excuse. So, how do you know if someone, like, how do you put in line if someone's using mental health as an excuse? Or, like, if, to be fair, if you're not taking part in the competition you went for, you're losing out on a medal, potential medal for the country. But there were a lot of criticism to those sports people, but a lot of support too. So, but how do you draw the line in terms of, right, I'm not making an excuse, it actually affects me a lot, or that it is an excuse, I just don't want to do this
Yeah.
because I do.
Yeah. So I think also we have to reflect on what we assume, right? Because I think when you say that, oh, they use their depression as an excuse, it could be something that you believe as well.
Yeah,
That
that, I mean, I'm not saying that, I'm not saying they did, I'm saying they might have.
yeah, okay,
Yeah,
okay. So I think, I mean, honestly, there is no right or wrong answer to this. I think this is each to their own, right? Because at the end of the day, if you want to I mean, if you pan out and you see that I am saying that, oh, I can't do this because of this. Yes, you like you said, they are also losing out on an opportunity. They're also losing out on, what kind of growth they can see for themselves.
right.
And you are also sort of going into a victim space, right? That, oh, the external environment is not conducive to this right now, and I'm not going to do it. But having said that, I feel like we don't know everyone's space. We don't know what they're going through, and we can make assumptions based on, oh, but they should. But it could be quite unfair to somebody who might be really kind of knee deep in depression.
Right,
It's not a choice then, right? It
right.
goes beyond that. Beyond a point, it becomes something that actually cripples you. So I think it's so individual. It's really not one size fits all here. And um, I feel like if they are going through something as severe as depression, then giving yourself that space to step out of what is also kind of contributing to that pressure and depression, I mean, which is complicating things for you, might help you heal yourself and then come back in a better way, as opposed to trying to show resilience and trying to deal with it, but then cracking so badly that it's really hard for you maybe to realize it, or even for you to come back stronger. Like it's like, I mean, to give a very physical example, it's like an injury, right?
Right.
If you have an injury, are you going to go back and play, or are you going to say that, okay, maybe it needs this much rest, and maybe the injury is something that you can play with. So
Mhm.
then that is for you to figure whether this is something that is going to help me even short term and long term. And I think at the end of the day, that individual is dealing with the consequences of either of it, right? So it's essentially that, right? The person is
Mhm.
also, I mean, if they step out of a big match, they have pushed their career back so many months, years, I
That's
don't
true,
know.
yeah.
And so they are having to deal with that as well. Yeah. So I feel like we have to give space for that. And it's again, like, honestly, you guys are sick, right? Both of you. But you've not held that as an excuse to say, okay, chal, let's push it to next week, right? So in those cases, the things that you can help, you do,
Right.
and sometimes it goes beyond you. And then probably you need to kind of hit pause, heal yourself, get back on track much stronger, and more ready.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is it's very difficult, even like honestly in schools we see that, right? Of labeling kids and saying that kids use it as an excuse to get out of class, or do whatever and say, oh, but I have ADHD, right? Now at the end of the day, we have to call them out on that, because it doesn't, if you can say that, oh, I'm doing this because of this, then you obviously can see that you have some amount of regulation as well. So
Right.
I think that
But
is part of the training to figure, how do I handle it, right? How do I handle it? I can't just go about my life saying, you deal with me, I am just this, right? You can do that, people do that, but then you will have difficulties and then you deal with
yeah.
it. That's your choice, and that's going to be your consequence for it, right? You will have to deal with complicated
Mhm.
relationships and people walking out on
Yeah.
you, or whatever it is that happens, or whatever. I mean, maybe it doesn't happen as well, but yeah.
This is, I mean, it's actually a really good segue into what we're going to get into next. Firstly, in terms of how you talk to patients, because I know that a lot of people are not very open to the idea of therapy in the first place, and when they go, they might not be very open. So, how do you work that dynamic firstly? So, I think that's the first part of the question, is how do you make them more comfortable? I know you touched upon giving sort of personal anecdotes, but is there anything else?
Oh yeah, so I think, Prathip, I come from a space of being, I mean, I work in a very confined setup. I'm work in schools, so I do have a certain role here. It's like sometimes there are kids that have to come see me because it's been told to them.
Okay. Okay.
But having said that, there are a lot of self referrals that I have, right? There are a
Right.
lot of kids who refer themselves, or who just want, miss, I just need to talk to you. That's about it. So I think what I feel has worked for me personally in my previous school and the one I'm at right now as well, is that there's a lot of there's a lot of trust that starts to build within the community for the person. So I know, I mean, Ashwin is somebody who will probably keep telling his friends, right, that, oh, talk to
Yeah.
Yogita ma'am. And so, that sort of thing already gives them a certain comfort that, okay, she might be able to help me. That is still just getting them to start to talk, okay? So again, like I said, I am not in a place to speak based on, say, parents who have dragged their kids to
Hmm.
you. That has not
Right.
happened with me because, like I said, I get a lot of self-reference. But even in that case, there is a lot of time that you need to give. Yeah, like, so for example, yeah, maybe a parent has made a referral, or a teacher has made a referral, the child doesn't want to be there, right? Or they are extremely non-trusting at that point. So you let them be for a bit. Yeah, we talk about things till they are ready to feel comfortable enough to get into that space with you, because rushing it is not going to work. Building trust is not a short term thing. Yeah? You have to kind of, it has to come from, so that's what I'm saying. So in a situation like a school, my reputation helps if
Hmm.
kids feel that, oh no, what you tell her will stay with her. There's also our code, right, which talks of confidentiality, which gets broken only in case of if there's harm to the person or to somebody else. So whatever you tell me is confidential, right? So
Right.
I think that is something I kind of talk about when I start. And I do give kids a lot of time to get into it, because it's something that I can, because I see them every day. I have a lot of other ways of noticing how they're doing. But if it's somebody outside, then you it's like you're paying for the session, right? So you kind of want to do a VFM
Yeah.
sort of thing. So you want to, and I see that, like, a lot of kids that are referred outside, I felt like they were not comfortable talking to the therapist. They felt like, oh, okay, they're not going to be able to keep confidentiality, or that I didn't get the good vibe, because with me they can,
Okay.
the vibe can come over time,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so that's
Right.
something
Right.
that space allows. But with someone who you just meet, it's difficult, right? It's not comparable. So I think there's a lot of that. There's a lot of time, space. There's a lot of trying to look at relatability, what it is that maybe we connect on, and things like that, to just ease the process, and then slowly it can build.
And one more thing you touched upon while talking to Ashwin was about calling people out sometimes or in some ways. Like, so as okay, as an example, if some of my friends were going through something, so how do I know to what level I can, or like when to call them out versus how pushy I can be? Because sometimes they may not be in a place where I should push them. So
Now I'll jump on this because so we took a break for more than a month, and a lot of the times, like at the end of December and start of Jan, I was going through things, and that's why I couldn't restart. But after a point, I was just procrastinating, and I told Praatibh that I'm going through things. But I think I was going through things. That's where this question came to my mind about, dude, am I using this as an excuse? And yeah, like when does Praatibh tell me that, dude, you need to get up, we need to start this again? So how do you know, like what?
So what happened? What happened? How did you had that thought, right?
Yeah.
Then what happened?
Nothing happened. I just procrastinated for a little
You
while.
still procrastinate
No, then I
till
realized we have
he.
to start the podcast, and then
Okay,
yeah, we
okay.
started it. And also because I missed this, so I realized as much as I was procrastinating, I missed the whole process of it. But also, so I'm the editor, so not getting into it a lot. I'm the editor, so the
Yeah.
editing part of things makes me not want to work.
Ah,
But
right,
yeah,
right.
but yeah, I
Yeah.
got up. So that's when I asked myself this question, and yeah, when does Praatip tell me to get up and start doing something?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think again, these are very individual issues and individual. I think this is a very good example also because then it's like involves the two of you and we can
Mm-hmm.
talk about it. I think there is some amount of space you give the other person, and you can be there as a friend and you listen to them, and then there is a time at which the loop kind of starts to go over and
Right.
over again, and then either then it's like a take some action. So either you get the help that is required or you sort of get back in terms of so this is something that again I don't know if it's a stereotype, but this happens a lot where people tell you to ignore what's happening, get into things that are,
right, yeah,
like do
distract
something
yourself.
that's purpose, yeah,
Yes.
distract yourself,
Yeah.
do things which are purposeful, right? And, I mean, that's something that absolutely does not work because you are just like brushing your, smelly rats under the rug
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
still smell, right? You can't, just because you can't see them doesn't mean they don't exist, right? So
Yeah.
so are you I think just to be aware of that as a friend, just to say that okay, are you okay? What do you need, right? And work through what is there. Work through what because you can even procrastinate on that, right? You're also procrastinating on your mental health, right? That, it's in fact it's so non-tangible. This is at least tangible. You know that you have to pull out an episode every month or every fortnight, but working on yourself is something you can just push off and say, "ठीक है, हो जाएगा. We'll do it later. I have my entire life or whatever." So it is really about maybe calling out that what are you like? What do you want to do about it? What is
yeah,
it that you want to do? Do you need to talk to someone? Do you want to talk to me? Do you like need me to come see you? Do you want to just go somewhere? Do you want to whatever that will make the person it's helping them, right? When it starts to become I think if it's difficult to say because there are some times that it could be genuinely starting to get clinical, right?
Right.
Anxiety, depression. These are
Yeah.
things that in these weird times, it is something that are there. And just because like somebody is okay the next day, sometimes you feel like oh they are exaggerating, or when it comes to work they
Right.
don't want to do it, right?
Yes.
Like with mental health, that's a very gray area, right? It doesn't mean if you're depressed doesn't mean that you're under the blanket
Mm-hmm.
24/7, right? So it's very difficult to say, but I think what you could do as a friend is to offer whatever is possible and bring them to a solution space, right? If they're going to just go on with their story, then that's not helping. Is it helping? What you're doing, is it helping you? Is it working? Is it something that you're able to so what I tell kids is typically pushing things aside, like I said, is not going to do anything for us. It will exist and it will probably grow because you're like not looking at
yeah,
it, right? um, we need to find a time where you can it needs to lose its grasp over you, right?
right, yeah,
Because that's when you have conquered it. That's when you're like, okay,
yeah,
you've kind of gone to the space of acceptance. You've been able to make space for it in your life, right? Because it's not going anywhere anyway. Like, if it's something that is life changing or difficult, it's not something you can do anything about. If it is, then do it, change it. But if it isn't, then the only way to go about it is to kind of see it for what it is. It will make you uncomfortable, but the more you look at it, the less uncomfortable you will get because you get used to it, right? You kind of deal with, okay, yeah, it's there now, what next, right?
Right.
um and how do I still stay true to who I am as a person, what I need to do, what is my purpose, right? What am I here for? So, uh, the thoughts that are unhelpful, if you can kind of decide, I mean, this is for someone who's probably going through something, if you can be mindful of what's going on in your mind and have it flow in front of you without sort of, it's like, I think I must have given this analogy before, but I keep telling kids how, if you're either at a station or in maybe your home and you have a road running ahead of you, and you need to be behind in your room, behind your window, watching the traffic, and that's your thoughts, as opposed to be
Right.
like jumping onto the
Right.
road, kind of evading the traffic, getting into a cab, or just riding with the flow, right? So I think if you can step back and you can see what's happening, you can let it come and go. Maybe like if it's a train of thought, right, and you're watching it from a bench, the train might keep coming back faster and faster and
Mhm.
faster, but over time it's going to reduce. You just have to kind of live through that, and it does. It's like dealing with loss, right? Loss as well. I mean, that's something that probably is personal to me. So I realize how I lost my mom about 7 years ago, and I remember, like, today I can just talk about it without tearing up or feeling so bad or anything. It's fine. I mean, I've dealt with it, but I couldn't have done that 2 years ago, and let alone like when it happened, right? So the more I look at it as what is something that I can't change, the more you kind of deal with it. You get used to it and you move on. If you start saying, "Poor me, why did this happen? Why did you?" If you keep dwelling on that, you're always going to feel like you were you were a victim to something, or that was unjust, or and there's a lot of complaining that can come with that. So we talk about circle of control. What is it that you can control? What is it that you can't, right? You can control your reactions to things. You cannot control what happens. You can't control people's reactions. You can't do any of that. So how do you respond is the only thing that you can do something about. So yeah, some people take much longer. Some of us
Mhm.
get it faster, right? So
That's
Yeah.
Praatibh, एक minute.
Go
That's
on.
very interesting. I felt like you showed me a mirror there full of truths, because when you was talking about if it's a cycle that's repeating, that's when I caught myself asking myself if it is an excuse. Because in the 1.5 years that we've
yeah,
been doing this, the number of times I've told him, "Dude, I can't do this now. I need a
I'm
break."
not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's when I picked it up, like in Jan, at least in the start of that Jan, that I think this is an excuse and I have to do something about it. Praatibh, go on, go on.
But Ashwin, also
Yeah.
it's a huge plus, and it's a big part of why you are where you are, because you have a support system, and Pratham is part of that support
Right.
system. I think
Yeah.
he
Yes.
has the comfort to call you out, and you
Yes.
have the comfort to hear him out, right? If you
Yes.
don't have that, who's going to do it for you, right? And
Yeah.
that's why it becomes harder for some people to step out,
Right.
because
That's true.
they sort of dwelling and nobody can really help them step out.
Hmm.
So having a strong support system is a big part of how things go.
Yeah. That's meeting him, however, is a luxury. You guys should know that. In the 1.5 years, the only time we've made an episode together is on a 1 year anniversary. But yes, go whatever. Go ahead, Pratibh.
Even virtually, or what,
I mean,
Pratham?
don't blame me. It's also COVID.
No, we
I
don't
thought,
do virtually. We hardly meet. We meet once in couple of months. Even if you're in Bangalore, in the same city. Yes.
I mean, I'm blaming COVID. I'm not going to say that I don't like coming out. Cool, then. Okay, so I think this is the last question that I have. It's somewhat vague also. I mean, it's more to do with when do you know, or like at what point do you think that, or how do you draw a distinction between, say, a personality trait and a mental health issue? Like, uh, I don't even know what the best example for this could be, but I mean, that's my question. I don't know if it.
Yeah, for example, like I was telling Pratap this example that, like, if I'm an introvert, let's say someone else is an introvert, just for the sake of an example, and they would naturally, I'm assuming, would feel anxious to go on stage to speak in front of a crowd. Now, if they start feeling anxious and start having panic attacks, what do you address? Do you address the personality, or do you address the issue of going on the stage and speaking in front of people? So, how do you make the distinction of, right, this is your personality, we can't do anything about it, or this is an issue and we need to address this issue?
right. So I think it would come down to comfort. What is it that you want for yourself, right? right? What are you comfortable with? So is it important to you to speak up on the stage? Because it might not be, right?
Right.
So who am I to tell you that this is something you should do, or this is something you should conquer?
Sorry to button, but again, there's like a whole this thing of you should get out of your comfort zone for certain things at least. Like, personally for me, I was never a good public speaker. Even now, I don't know if I am, but just starting this podcast and just getting out there helped me improve. So, like, in that case, where do you know when to maybe push someone? So, yeah.
So if I had to ask you, what pushed you? What made you want to take on something like that? Did it feel extremely daunting, or was it something that you said, okay, I think it's about time I step into this?
I think it's about time. Yeah, I think that's how it was for me.
And maybe 4 years ago, would you have done something like this? Even if Ashwin had like come to your house, sat in
Probably.
your sat outside the door, you would have, if you were pushed, if you
Mhm.
were really pushed, would you have done
Yeah.
it, and would it have been as comfortable for you?
I don't know honestly, but yeah, I wouldn't have been as comfortable as I am right now, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
So I think that's the thing, right? It's really about what you want. Like
want
if
something.
people want to be in their comfort zone, then I don't know if it is our prerogative to really shake them out of it,
Right.
because if they are, like I said, if they're in their comfort zone, they're also their their rewards and consequences are also coming from that space. They're not going to get very rewarding experience. It's going to be the same because
Yeah.
you're staying where you are, and you can't expect things to change for you unless you change, right?
Right.
So I mean, I have been in my comfort zone for a long time and and it's like you resign to it in your head. You're like,
Mhm.
what more? Like that's it, right? And
Yeah.
unless you kind of get that validation, sometimes it works externally. Somebody kind of tells you that,
Yeah.
hey, you are worth much more, you can do a lot more,
Mhm.
right? Or somebody sometimes I don't know, like maybe you stagnate and you have an aha moment of saying that, okay, why am I feeling this way? Am I feeling
Right.
satisfied? Because if I am satisfied, so again, a comfort zone is satisfying, right? It's comfortable, you feel good. It's just
Yeah.
not, it doesn't push you into people have, I don't know, maybe your parents' generation as well, but like my parents, they stuck to jobs for 20, 30 years, yeah, one job, same
Yeah.
place, right? So, I mean, it was also the trend back then. It wasn't very common to jump around. If you were a jumper, there was something wrong with you. But it's really, I think we have to give each one their space to figure out when they're ready to move out. Because if I was pushed out of my comfort zone, I would have, if it hadn't worked, okay, if it worked, it would have been like, oh, thank you very much. But if it
Right.
hadn't
Yeah.
worked, I'd have that person to blame and say, oh, you did this to me, oh, you made it happen, oh, that's why, we do that, right? We just naturally do that. It's like any big life changing thing. Yeah, it's very difficult to really say if you're ready or not for it. I think it's a very individual thing whether
Right.
you want to and you're ready for it and you want to take that leap. And I think the moment you have a buy-in,
Mhm.
the way you'll go about it
Right.
will be extremely different, right? It will not be, but at the same time, like for example, friend of mine has been really on my case about like, I think you should write a book. Okay, now a year ago, I would have been like, are you crazy? Like, what am I going to even write about? Like, why would I write a book? That
Right.
sort of thing. But I think that person is like bombarding it so much on me that no, it's something you should do, you can do. I started to think
Right.
about it. And today I really think that this can happen. I want to do it. I'm interested in at least exploring it. And so it can work both ways. You never know when
Right.
someone is, and it's irritating, right? Sometimes when somebody is pushing you into a place you don't want to go, it can be like, okay, I look after myself. Thank you very much. But
Yeah.
but I think subconsciously it's
Right.
making a dent. It's sort of helping you see that you are capable of much more. You can do more with your life, right? So yeah, I don't know, right? I don't know if I answered your question even, but I think it works
Yeah, I
both ways.
mean, yeah, like that's why I asked it is because I mean there are some things that we talk about in a very ideal sense, but then there's society, as you spoke about, like maybe our parents or your parents, and there's like this stigma around maybe switching jobs. So that was the whole reason why I wanted to. Yeah.
Now, because it's Praatibh and I, we can ask you questions forever, but unfortunately, we need to end this. But this is how we end
Yep.
our episodes.
Okay.
Are you a coffee or tea person?
Coffee only.
That was such a quick answer.
Only, okay.
Disappointing.
Yeah,
quick.
it's just coffee for me.
That is.
Why?
I would.
What did you want me to say? I should.
Oh,
Wait, give me a minute. Hold on.
No, at least-
Actually,
no,
I
I
think
just
it's
want.
coffee.
I just want people to give tea a chance. That's all.
Sorry, I don't even. I don't know how to make tea. I don't know if it's bad, it's good. I have no clue. Like I don't know what makes a good tea. So
This is the problem. Whenever I tell people I don't like cake, they tell me it's because I haven't had the right kind of cake. Maybe that's the problem. You haven't had the right kind of tea.
yeah, well, I won't know if I do either. It'll just be like, okay,
Yeah, that's fair.
it doesn't taste like coffee.
Oh yeah, that's so
Sorry.
sad. But yeah, ma'am, thank you so much for joining in. This was great. I learned so much, and just to know about a lot of things through a psychologist's point of view, it was very interesting. A very interesting take. Because sometimes we forget that they're human beings themselves. So thank you.
Yo, thank you. So cool. Thanks so much for having me. It was so fun.
Yo, thanks for tuning into the latest episode of Just Batein. We hope you enjoyed it and that it left you inspired. Thanks for all your support, and maybe you could support us just a little more by maybe going to our Instagram and Twitter and giving us a follow there. And also you can listen to us on all podcasting platforms, right from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to Google Podcasts. Cheers.